Welcome back to the Smart Girl Politics podcast. I am your host, Teri, bringing you the latest in what I like to call isolation interviews, as we're all isolating at home and needing to know what's going out in the world and finding trusted sources. So happy to bring number 10. I think this is interview number 10. And today my guest is Christiana Holcomb, and she is legal counsel at Alliance Defending Freedom. Christiana, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to delve into some really interesting stuff. But first, I like to always check in with my guests and see how isolation's going. Where is it that you are located in the United States yourself? Are you in a hotspot lockdown area?
We are, yes. So I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. We've been under lockdown. Goodness, it feels like for weeks and weeks on end. So I'm working from home today.
Okay. I'm in Northern Virginia too, so I feel the pain, and the weather is no good. Yes,
dreary and cold today.
No, glad you're doing well. And we had a couple misses, but we finally been able to connect after a few weeks. And the reason I wanted to talk with you, amongst many wonderful things that Alliance Defending Freedom does, which if people don't know, I mean, I'm just giving the short version, is that you are a legal nonprofit that helps preserve and protect and defend religious freedom in particular. But maybe if you want to expand on that, that was just the quickie version.
No, that's exactly right. So we are a legal organization dedicated to protecting the First Amendment freedoms of every American, and particularly their free exercise of religion, their right to free speech, and so on. The cherished fundamental freedoms that all of us hold dear.
And the one thing that I love everything you guys do, but one of the things in terms of Smart Girl Politics, which is an organization for women of conservative values, American values, the thing that has been very interesting, I know, to the audience and to our Facebook page is the discussion about transgender athletes, or in particular, boys that think they're girls participating in girls' sports. Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe we could take it from the very beginning. Obviously, Title IX is the thing that changed everything for women in terms of equal opportunity in education and sports. It's kind of the basis of lawsuits and things that we see going on right now. Is that correct in terms of protecting the girls against, having to compete against, boys who their gender is male?
Yes, you're exactly right. So as you mentioned, Title IX is a federal law passed nearly 50 years ago, and is one of the big reasons that we even have women's sports as a separate category in the first place. Title IX was designed to not just stop sex discrimination against women in education, but also, regulations and other rules developed around Title IX, specifically in the sports context, to make sure that young women have the opportunity to compete on a level playing field. And it protects on the basis of biological sex. So it protects the female sex category to ensure that girls can, have the opportunity to be champions, to shine, to be on the podium, and to advance to the next level of competition. And frankly, even compete in many cases for college scholarships.
Exactly. So in terms of this, it seems like a more recent phenomenon. Like you said, Title IX's been something that's been around for 50 years. It's been championed by feminists as a great thing, and it's obviously provided a lot of opportunity for young women in terms of scholarships and other kinds of opportunities. It seems like this is a more recent phenomenon. Obviously, the whole transgender, it's kind of a more modern movement. 50 years ago, I think it was probably not if not non-existent, a very rare phenomenon. So what's happened in maybe the last, I'd say even 5 years? I mean, I didn't really hear about it except for maybe in the past 5 years. Where is this coming from? What's started? I mean, from your point of view in being intimately involved with some of the girls who are affected, and we can talk about them in a minute, but when did this start? What's going on here? Why is this a thing now?
Well, certainly 50 years ago, there was no question about what the definition of a female was, right? But as you say, within the last, particularly 5 years or so, it's difficult to pinpoint a beginning. There has been a movement to try to give legal recognition to biological males who identify as female. And so some, not all, but some athletic associations across the country began to change their policies to allow physically stronger males with bigger, faster, stronger muscles to compete in the girls category. And that's had a real detrimental effect to young female athletes. Comparably fit and trained males are going to beat a female athlete every single time. And so it's really been disheartening. It's been frustrating. It's been scary for the young female athletes that I've talked to who have been forced and placed in this impossible situation by their own athletic association policies, which now require them to compete against a male in the female sex category.
So, can we talk a little bit about the girls that you're working with? What caught my eye, and this was a few months back, is the lawsuit in Connecticut, because we've all been wanting to see somebody come and do a lawsuit. So there is a lawsuit, and ADF, and I believe you yourself are involved in it, and it involves three girls, high school girls who compete in sports in Connecticut. So can you tell a little bit about that lawsuit that's, I guess, maybe was filed in February? Is that right?
That's right, yes. So in early 2017, for the first time that we're aware, a male began competing in the high school girls track and field category and completely obliterated the female competition. Since that time, another male athlete is also competing in the girls category in Connecticut. And together, they have taken 15 women's state championship titles. So that's 15 different girls who were knocked off the podium, didn't get that gold medal, didn't get the champion title, and the recognition, frankly, that they deserved. Alliance Defending Freedom has the privilege of representing three of the female athletes who have been displaced by these males. Selena Soule, first, was not able to advance to a higher and more prestigious level of competition because her position was taken by one of these male athletes. Second, we represent Chelsea Mitchell, who personally has lost 4 state championship titles to biological males. Can you imagine how painful that would be?
And yeah, I mean, as if being a teen girl isn't hard enough, putting your best effort out there and just having something like that happen is just soul crushing. I imagine.
Yeah. And to be referred to in the media as, the third place non-transgender runner, when in fact, she was the fastest biological female in her category. She should have been recognized as state champion. And then third, we also represent Alana Smith, who, again, competed against one of these male athletes at a very elite competition as a freshman. She should have received runner-up, should have received the silver medal, but instead, she was bumped down a spot, received the bronze. And as Alana has said, she's like, look, bronze medal is nothing to be ashamed of if it's earned fair and square. But I earned fair and square that silver medal, and I did not receive it because there was a male who competed against me in the category. So Alliance Defending Freedom has the privilege of representing these 3 brave female athletes who, as teenagers, decided this is not fair. And this is something that, not just for themselves, but for other female athletes across their state, they wanted to stand up and push back and say, look, we have nothing against these male athletes individually, but they should not be competing in our category.
Right. And to circle back on some of the comments from the girls, these aren't just medals or, pride that's being lost. There's real opportunities that can impact the rest of their lives that are being lost. I'm assuming in terms of scholarships and other things that just being, a leader in your sport can bring about.
Absolutely. By way of example, Selena, I mentioned, was not able to advance to a state level competition and thereafter move up to a regional competition because of male athletes in her sport. Well, these are elite competitions where college scouts come out, they watch the athletes compete in person, and it's really difficult to assess how much of an impact that not being there is going to have on her future athletic career opportunities and scholarship potential.
Well, I thought it was interesting to note in some of the things that I read about the lawsuit is that it actually involves the 3 girls and their mothers. Is that correct? Did I read that correctly?
That is correct, yes.
Which I think is so cool because their mothers are probably people that were earlier on in Title IX, had opportunities, or maybe not, but that it's women, the moms. I think the moms are the ones that are going to have to lead this fight. Not that the dads don't have an important part to play in it, but I think the moms obviously can recognize just what their daughters are going through and maybe, are mourning the lost opportunities that their they're not going to ever see. So I think it's a really cool part of it is that the moms are involved.
Absolutely. These are the opportunities that their mom's generation absolutely fought so hard for and really reaped the benefits of. And so, again, to see us come less than 50 years after Title IX was passed to a point where the female sex category is really in jeopardy in the United States. If these policies proliferate across the country, we will reach a point at which we have male sports and co-ed sports. And that's really a travesty, given all that we've accomplished, all the benefits that sports and those type of opportunities provide young women like Selena, Chelsea, and Alana. So it's been really cool to see their moms stand up and really fight alongside them for restoration of fairness.
And what has the reaction been, do you know, amongst those three girls and their friends, the community? I'm assuming that they tried to complain in other ways and just the lawsuit was really the only thing that was going to get them real action on this troublesome issue. Do you know what kinds of reaction? I have to assume these girls are real targets, which scares me for them.
Yeah, no, filing the lawsuit was absolutely the final resort. These families had taken all steps that they could think of as far as complaining to their school districts and asking them for help and for them to effective change. They talked to the athletic association directly and said, look, this is the impact that this is having on our daughters, and not just them, but on documented dozens and dozens of girls across the state of Connecticut. Please make a change. And eventually the athletic association refused to even receive communication from them any further. So the adults in the room who should have fixed the problem from the very beginning have refused to do so, which is why the lawsuit became necessary. But what has been, I will say, what has been really encouraging, though, as far as the community support, has just been the number of other young women who have reached out to Selena, Chelsea, and Alana and said, thank you. Thank you for standing up for me, too. I'm too scared to do it, but thank you for being willing to push back.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a game changer. I mean, hopefully it will be a game changer.
Hope so.
Yeah, and that's the natural conclusion, like you were saying, is completely anti what Title IX is all about, where it's co-ed on one side and male on the other. Like, that's just insane. And I guess me, more of a grassroots activist type person, gets very frustrated at seeing the lack of support for these young girls from so-called, feminist groups. It's very, very frustrating because they were the ones that were very much part of making Title IX a thing and celebrating what it was meant to do. And now it's completely turned on its head. So that's a real frustration.
Yes, exactly. There was a group of feminist organizations that actually signed a letter opposing my female athletes. Essentially, they're no longer able to fully grasp what a woman is and who belongs in the female sex category. But I will say there is a remnant of self-identified radical leftist feminists who have come to the vocal support of these three female athletes. Women's Liberation Front is one, for example. They have been so supportive, so encouraging. In fact, they held a public forum for the girls to give them a platform to share their experience. So this, at bottom, should not be a partisan issue, right? This is something that the American public across the board should be able to coalesce around, which is fairness for girls and for female athletes particularly.
Well, that's great to hear. That is actually unexpected to hear that there's that, but because it's very rare that happens. Yeah. So that is nice to hear. Now, in terms of how in other parts of the country, Idaho has sort of taken a lead on this too. I think if I read it correctly, that on March 30th, so we're recording on April 30th, so 1 month ago today, they signed the Fairness for Women's in Sports Act. Are you able to speak of that a little bit?
Yes, that was a very hopeful sign. So well over a dozen different states have put forward bills to try to prevent what happened in the state of Connecticut. They put forward bills that would protect the female sex category to ensure that if you're going to call it women's sports, that only biological females are competing on that team. Well, Idaho was really the first to the finish line, and we congratulate Governor Little for having signed that bill into law. But of course, to no one's surprise, the ACLU has turned around and filed a federal lawsuit challenging that law. So we will wait and see how that plays out, but it's a very encouraging step forward and hopefully continues to highlight to the American public the importance of this issue and the fact that we really need to get, everyday moms and dads, women who benefited from Title IX back in their day, grandparents whose daughters are going to be competing on the athletic field in the future. These are the people who need to be speaking out and supporting female athletes and fairness for women's sports.
So there is an interview up on ADF's website, which is adflegal.org, and I'll link to it in show notes and all of that, with the woman in Idaho. Her name is Representative Barbara Ahart. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And she introduced the Fairness for Women in Sports Act, and she is someone who benefited greatly from Title IX in terms of her own career in sports, and then she became a coach. And I thought it was very interesting. The thing that stood out the most in the article was when she talked about her coaching career, when she coached women's college basketball, and she brought in a team of like recreational male basketball players to help play against her team to kind of get them better. And she said, like, these are not these are recreational. These are not guys that didn't make the team. These are guys that just play for fun, basically. And her team, who are these well-conditioned, well-trained athletes, didn't stand a chance. And it's not anything bad about women. It's just how it is. Right. They just didn't stand a chance, which I thought was just so, like, she had to tell them to, the guys chill out a little bit. Like, it's just a fact. It's just a fact. And it's, I think it says it all about what these kinds of lawsuits are all about, and the kinds of things that a lot of people these days don't want to see as real, is that there just is that difference. And it's a great thing. It's a good thing to celebrate, I think. I just thought that was a really important piece. It was an amazing example of just what we're talking about. Just this, it's not against anybody. It's just how it is.
Yes. And that's one of the reasons that gives me hope for the future of this movement and ensuring that we protect women's sports as a separate category, because intrinsically, I think the American people understand, science and common sense tell us that males and females are biologically different. And when we're looking for fair competition, biological sex is really the primary basis from which you get major differences in performance. I've seen some studies that say, males have an average of a 10 to 20% in performance advantage over females. The biggest performance advantage is going to be tied to biological sex. And that's the reason that we as a society have separated out athletics into male and female categories. And it's really the prime basis for trying to ensure that our daughters and our granddaughters have the opportunity to stand on that podium, to receive a medal, to be champions, and to experience that thrill of victory.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I was thinking about it a little bit, I was thinking, it's one thing if a transgender male, whatever you want to say, if a male is competing in track against females, but what about in team sports? Like, the things that scares me is things that do get more physical, obviously are more of an individual in that. But if you are on field hockey, soccer, whatever it is, that physical advantage that men have can actually hurt women physically. It's not just hurting opportunities and things like that. It hurts. It could lead to hurting them physically. And that's where I think it's going to really hit the fan.
No, you're exactly right. I'm already hearing anecdotal evidence from males competing in girls' sports that do involve a lot of physical contact and power and strength. And the stories that I'm hearing coming out of these events are, girls are getting hurt in higher numbers than they would otherwise if they were competing against a similarly strength biological female. So these are issues that we as a society have got to grapple with and decide, hey, is this worth it? Are the costs here to our female athletes going to be worth it? Frankly, are they even going to be interested in competing in girls' sports going forward if they can't win and if they're more likely to get hurt as a result? I don't think so.
No,
so a lot of
that for our girls
down the line ramifications. No,
they deserve way better. What would your advice be for a woman or a young a girl, a young woman, somebody that's facing this right now, that they are being put in an unfair situation of having to compete against a biological male, or a family that's grappling with this issue, what advice do you have? I mean, because it takes a lot of guts to come out and speak out against it, because you're going to get a ton of hate. But what is your advice, and what kind of things could ADF help them with?
Well, I would certainly encourage them, first and foremost, to be talking with the athletic association or the school districts that pass the policy. Go up the chain of command, make those concerns known. I would network with other concerned parents. There's safety in numbers, and a lot of times it's just comforting and reinforcing to know that they really are not the only one out there with concerns about this issue. I think the vast majority of people recognize the unfairness of allowing males to dominate the female category, but they just need a leader. They just need somebody to link arms with and help them communicate their concerns about the policy. And then certainly they're welcome to reach out to Alliance Defending Freedom as well, and we'd be happy to evaluate the situation.
Awesome. Now, I wanted to ask one thing before we wrap things up. Now, ADF is not, maybe you're not really going through a slow time right now like a lot of other businesses are in this time of, hey, everybody's at home or things are chilled out. You guys are in kind of hyperactive overdrive right now in terms of just threats to religious freedom and threats to churches and pastors and various things. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on? Because I know, the gender stuff I think is important, but it's probably not forefront right now in terms of just some of the violations that we're seeing. People, masses and services that can't be held, people being targeted by police if they show up in the park, crazy things that it's just really hard to see believe that we're seeing in America right now.
It really is surreal. Yes, so there's a number of different, whether it's state, city, or local municipal ordinances, where they have these lockdowns that have actually specifically targeted churches or will have a discriminatory impact on churches. So, for example, you're welcome to drive into Sonic and you can eat your meal in your car, but if you drive into a church service with your windows rolled up and listen to the sermon over your radio frequency, that's a violation and you'll be fined at that point. So clear discrimination against religious activity, not something that is permissible under the First Amendment. And so Alliance Defending Freedom has filed a number of federal lawsuits and what are called TROs, which are emergency requests to the court to stop an unconstitutional law that's causing immediate harm. And by God's grace, we've won a number of those. A number of mayors have pulled back on their unconstitutional restrictions on churches, but it's still a very fluid situation. We're continuing to monitor, continuing to file lawsuits as necessary, but we're encouraged that in some cases, when the violation is pointed out, the government authorities have recognized it, have pulled back, and allow churches to meet in a safe and reasonable way consistent with the rest of the community.
I'd like to see that happen a little bit more. I mean, in our area, I guess you can have 10 people. I live right by my church, so I know you can have 10 people at any one time, but that's not a whole lot in my parish. It's it would be nice to be able to do something on a bit bigger scale. So hopefully we're moving towards that.
I hope so.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us about this. If people want to learn more about Alliance Defending Freedom, and I'll just put in a plug, maybe want to give a donation to your very important work, how can they do that?
They're welcome to learn more or donate at adflegal.org.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Christiana. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed it.